Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be replacing the front struts on this 2009 Maxima. Now this should fall in line with any 7th gen Maxima, which is 2009 to 2014. So let's get into it now. All right, now the first step, of course, is going to be getting the wheel off. Now this wheel has aftermarket lug nuts. They are 19 millimeter, but if you have the OEM Acorn styles, they're most likely a 21 mil. So I have an impact here. We're just going to go ahead, fire these right off. We're just going to do the same thing for the other four. All right, so we have the wheel off here. So now we have access to the strut and all the components we need to remove in order to get this off. Now I'm just going to start with the lines. I'm going to go ahead and get this retainer off of the brake hose. We're going to pop that out, get the line off of the strut, and then we're going to go ahead and get this harness wire here from the ABS sensor. We're going to pop this out of the strut as well. So I'll just start with this. Honestly, you can just pull it out with your hands. It's just retained right on with a rubber grommet. All right. Switch hands here, do the other side. So there we go. We have that entire wire free now. So now what we're going to do is move on to this brake hose. Now for the retainer clip right here, there's a few different ways you can get it off. I just take a pry bar, start at one side, start pressing it up like that. Now we're on the other side, pry it up, and then you can just literally push it right off. And now this brake hose will slide right out of that retainer that was holding it onto the strut. All right, so now that we have the ABS wire line free, we have the brake line here free. We're going to go ahead and move on to our sway bar end link right here. Now this is a 18 millimeter nut. I'm going to go ahead and take an impact on it, fire it right off. Now sometimes these things can spin on you if you don't have an impact, but what you can do is you can take an Allen key, put it right dead center, and you can use like a ratcheting wrench or a wrench, and you can work it off while holding that stud in place. All right, but got that off. End link is free. All right, now that we have the end link out of the way, we're going to go ahead and remove our two bolts holding the strut to the knuckle. Now this is a 21 millimeter bolt with a 21 millimeter nut. So what I'm going to do is just take a 21 millimeter wrench, and I'm going to take a 21 millimeter on an impact, and we're going to fire this right off. But you could also use like a big half drive socket wrench or breaker bar, something of that nature. But there we go, guys. Got that right off. And we're just going to do the same thing for the bottom. All right, now that we have both of these 21 mil bolts out, we should be able to free that strut up from the knuckle, and as you can see, we've completely separated it, and the only thing holding it on now is our 3 mount bolts on the top. All right, now that we have everything essentially free down there in the wheel well, we're here under the hood. So there is a plastic cover that is covering up where the strut mounts. So this should have some plastic retainer clips in it, although this one is completely free, missing the clips, so we can just lift it off. And that gives us access to our 3 13 millimeter bolts that are holding the strut mount to the strut tower. All right, we're going to go ahead and get these 3 13 millimeter bolts off, but I figured I'd show you that rubber strut mount right there. As you can see, it's completely ripped, torn, separated. And that is our cause here on the passenger side of a bunch of unpleasant noises. So there it is, guys. Looks pretty crappy, but we're going to go ahead. I'm going to take a 13 millimeter on an impact. We're going to fire this one off and then this side off, and I'm just going to take a small thin 13 millimeter socket on a thin 3/8 drive, and we're going to back that one off as well. So let's go ahead and get these 3 13 millimeter bolts out. I'm just going to crack this one. I'm not going to back it all the way out. Like I said, I have a thin 3/8 drive here, 13 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead, back this back bolt out here, and we'll go ahead and get the other 2 out, and then we're going to drop this strut. All right, we are working this last 13 millimeter strut mount bolt out. It's free. As you can see, our strut is dropping down in the tower. Now make sure you're holding it, because you really don't want it resting on your axle boot or anything like that. So try to maneuver this a little bit off of that. There we go. And then we're going to pull this thing right out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and maneuver this thing out. Just be careful of your lines, be careful of your boots here on the axle. Should be able to finagle it on out by moving the knuckle just like this. As you can see, I'm just holding it, not letting it rest on anything that could potentially rip. And there we go, guys. Full strut, ready mount assembly all the way out. All right, so I have our new ready mount assembly here. So just going to try to sneak this in here. We got to go under the brake line, of course, again, and our ABS wire line. Just want to be careful maneuvering everything up. Now, once I get this up into the strut tower, I want to take one of those strut mount bolts. We're going to start it off, and we're going to do another one on the other side just to hold it in place. So I have it pretty much lined here. So what I'm going to do is start finger threading one of these upper strut mount bolts in here. Our old ones were a 13 millimeter. This one actually came with some 14 millimeters, some new ones. So I got one in. I'm going to go to the opposite side here, and we're just going to put two in for now, just to hold this in place. All right, guys, so I got it held in place, completely out of the way, and now we're going to go ahead and button this up and get everything reattached. All right, guys, so I have two of these upper strut mount bolts, just loosely, you know, just holding it in. Nothing crazy, not overly tight, not crazy loose. So what we're going to do is just start piecing this whole knuckle and everything back together. So I'm just going to start with maneuvering some of these lines out of the way, and we're just going to guide our steering knuckle right back into our strut mount on the bottom here where it meets the knuckle, and we're going to start guiding our 21 mil bolts right in. All right, guys, now you might have to play with this a bit. You can lift it with your leg, your hand, hold it, but I'm going to start with this top one. Just try to guide her on in. Might take a little bit of finagling, but should be able to find it. And there you go, got that one in. So now that we have our top 21 mil bolt in, we're going to go ahead and slide our bottom bolt in as well, and that thing fell right in place. It's completely aligned. So what we're going to do now is just finger thread that wire out of the way here. Just going to go ahead and finger thread these nuts back on, these 21 mil nuts onto our bolts. All right, so both of these on. All right, and now that we have that in position, we're going to go up to the top. We're going to go ahead and put our other bolt in, and we're going to torque all three of these to spec. All right, so let's get this back corner one in here. Let's get it started off. Finger threading it in. There we go. Trying to get these all relatively back into the same location that the mark was from the original nut. All right, now that we got all three of these finger tight, I'm just going to bounce from one to the other with our torque wrench here. Now the torque spec for these is 26 foot-pounds, okay? So our upper strut mount bolts here, 13, 14, whatever yours are, if you're using the old ones or if they came with some new ones that are different size, they are 26 foot-pounds. All right, so be careful on this back one, but you can kind of sneak it in there right underneath of that cowl, and we can get this one going too. So let's go ahead and get these torqued to spec. Got that one locked in. This one's probably pretty close locked in. We just got to get this back one locked in, guys, and we'll have all three of these torqued to 26 foot-pounds. There it is, guys, all torqued to spec. All right, so now that all three of our strut mount bolts there are torqued to 26 foot-pounds, we're going to come back under here in the wheel well, and we're going to torque our 21 mil nuts and bolts that mount this to the knuckle down right now. So the torque spec for these 21 mils is 103 foot-pounds. All right, so we're going to go ahead, put our 21 mil wrench right there, right on the nut, and I'm just going to take my torque wrench and we're going to go ahead and torque that bolt right to 103 foot-pounds. All right, we got that top one locked in. Let's go ahead and get that bottom one locked in as well. All right, guys, got that bottom one locked in as well. So now both of our lower strut mount bolts are both torqued to spec. All right, so we got those strut mount bolts here, torqued to spec. Last move that we have to torque here is just go ahead and push our end link right through here. I want to go ahead and finger tight that thing in there. Now that I got it going, I'm going to hold it real quick and just slightly fire this thing on with impact. Right there until it grabs. And now we're going to torque this nut to spec, and the torque spec is 58 foot-pounds. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, torque that nut right there on the end link to 58 foot-pounds. All right, so now that we have all of our bolts torqued to spec, we got the upper strut mount torqued, lower strut mount torqued, end link torqued. We're gonna go ahead and put our ABS wire right back in. Just slides right here on these tabs, right with the grommet. So that's locked in. And then we're gonna take our brake line here. Go ahead and slide this thing right back into place. Now I'm just gonna take our clamp here, attempt to get it started, sliding underneath of it, okay? Probably gonna have to hold that tight, pull on it, and what I wanna do is take a very small hammer, this right here, something that's not really forceful, and we should be able to start seating that right back into place. All right, guys, so we got that clamp seated back in, hose is tight, not moving, so lines are back secured. Everything is torqued to spec, so we officially got this new strut here fully installed. All right, guys, so we are fully installed. Last step here, of course, is just putting our plastic covers back on here. So got the cover back on. Should have clips to retain it, but you know, like I said, when we were taking this apart, they're missing, but only thing after that is putting the wheel back on. Now the wheel lug nuts are 80 foot-pounds if you want to torque those to spec. So that's all that's left here, guys. So I hope this helped with doing front struts on your 7th gen Maxima. Make sure you stay tuned because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.